Welcome to Video 1 video lecture. I highly recommend that you take notes, and also at the end of this presentation make sure that you review and learn key terminology. Also, please start the module from top to bottom. First, you're going to go over the very first page in the module. Then under that, you're going to find the video lectures for that particular module, and then they all follow the same order. And then after that, I'm going to provide you with resources, links, documents for you to be able to reinforce the concept and then your assignments. So get ready to take notes, and I also recommend that you organize maybe in a folder by topics or by modules. So let's get started. So when we're talking about the world interpreting translations, we're talking about bridging worlds, right? We're talking about the helping our clients or helping the community understand the differences in languages. So the objectives for this module, we're going to cover what interpreting is, also the core skills. What skills do you need, both in terms of hard and soft skills? And then we're going to go over the modes of interpreting, the interpreting process. How do you prepare, and what is the delivery like? Why is it important to be cultural sensitive, to know these linguistic differences, right? Because especially when a perfect example is when I go over the quotation marks rules in Spanish. What are some strategies that you can follow to become an effective interpreter and also translator? And we're going to talk about ethics. Very important, ethics, real world applications. Where can you work with? And we're going to do that more in depth in module 3, but we're just going to, in passing, mention it here as well. What in terms of professional development, how important is that? So this PowerPoint follows pretty much the same format for the rest of the PowerPoints in the class. I always go over the lesson objectives. So what is interpreting? And I'm not going to read word by word, but I want you to take the time to look at the definitions. And here we're talking about, we're conveying the spoken or sign language, right? From one language to another in real time. So we're interpreting either consecutive or simultaneous. So we're facilitating communication, different languages, right, spoken by different populations. So we're facilitating the communication. But there's certain skills that we need to have if you're going to be an effective interpreter. And the most important, of course, is active listening. How do we grasp the original message so that when we deliver it, we deliver in an efficient way and also very clear? You need to be an excellent communicator. You need to have your voice projected well, and then you also need to have this message delivered in the target language. So again, the modes of interpreting are very important for you to learn. They are going to be in the quiz, in your first quiz that you have for quiz modules 1 to 3. When we're talking about consecutive interpreting, and this is something I'll give you examples for when I did like college night or financial aid night at the different community colleges that I used to work in Southern California. Most of the translations I did, that was consecutive interpreting, meaning that I listened to the speaker, and then I process what the speaker is saying. I pause, and then I convey the message. I interpret. So there's a pause there versus simultaneous interpreting. Simultaneous interpreting, the perfect example is the UN, the United Nations interpreting. And also when I did some board for the board, school district board meetings, I would do mostly simultaneous interpreting. Sight translation is very important, not to confuse it with sign language, because sight translation is not the sign language, okay? This is that's what's called when you, and we've done this, most of us, and you included, I'm sure, we've done this as unofficial interpreters and translators for family members or for friends when we translate for them what a document says. So that's called a sight translation. It could be a questionnaire, medical questionnaire, when we're just looking at the language written in English and we're telling them what it says in Spanish. So medical questionnaires, forms, applications, etc. So it's very important you're going to have a class exercise in Module 1 because it's very important for you to understand how crucial it is to know cultural differences and how strong colloquial words are, in this case, in Spanish and throughout Latin America, but the same for idioms, right? For how important they are for us to learn them in the English language. So we have the colloquial, which is used in many different cultures have different colloquial words. So used in or suited to a familiar informal conversation. So we use colloquial language, and you're going to see some of the examples in the Google sheet, the Google slide that I provide for you, so that you can pick a slide and then write some colloquial words that come to mind in Spanish. Over a period of 5 times, 5 minutes, I want to see how many come up to your, so that you can write, and then their translation, what would be the equivalent in English. Then it's also important to learn slang, like what are some of the slang words and why are they being used, right? Because it could be, for example, court interpreting, it could be a case, and then, the person, the defendant uses slang, so it's important to know the slang language as well. And then regionalism. There's some specific words that are very particular to a region. So we need to know all these differences in terms of language. Very important for you to know the difference between a translator and interpreter. And this is a screenshot that I grabbed from the American Translators Association. So go over this. And then thinking point. I'm going to occasionally have thinking points just for you to reflect on some of the concepts that we're describing. In this case, I'm asking you to consider a scenario where the participants only speak English and others speak Spanish. So there's 2 different sets, cannot communicate. So I want you to think what would be more effective, to have a translator present or an interpreter. And then why? Why is the reasoning? So do this after you're done with the presentation. Maybe you can come back, and this is optional again. Start thinking and start reflecting, like what would be, because I also want real life applications and for you to start thinking of scenarios. Very important that you have, again, we mentioned the listening skills for the consecutive and simultaneous interpreting, how important those are. But also memory, because you need to have memory retention. You need to develop a good way of taking notes. Right, especially depending on the industry that you work in, but you're going to develop your own style of taking notes. And most importantly, you need to be proficient in both language and know the differences in terms of grammar and syntax, and you're going to get to practice that in Module 2. Cultural awareness is very important because we know that what could be perhaps considered acceptable in one culture is not acceptable in another one, so we want to avoid misinterpretations, right? Very excellent public speaking skills. You need to project. You need to be able to, for the target language and for the clients, or especially those. I remember during a time, an agency hired me to do presentations. They had public hearings in Santa Ana, and I had to really project my voice, right? Because they were big forums. Again, you're going to develop your own way of note taking. You need to write down, and everybody is different. There's some of us that maybe we write fast, and there's some of us that abbreviate. So you will know what works for you in terms of your note taking skills. Here's another thinking point, and I'm using AI more. In some of the PowerPoints I use image generated images through Adobe Express or maybe some other AI programs. So here I wanted you to think, in what situation would consecutive interpreting be more suitable than simultaneous interpreting? Simultaneous, it's almost at the same time. And again, consecutive is when you leave a pause and you're processing the information. So I want you to think when it would be more suitable, right? Or the other way around. Length of speech, the formality of the setting, and the available resources. So I want you to start giving thought to that, because you are going to practice in the coming modules. You'll get to practice those. So how do we interpret? How does the interpreting process work? And many times you're going to see me refer to interchangeably. to interpreting and translations. But here we want to highlight the pre-preparation and preparation, especially because now, for example, if I have to do something online interpreting or a medical interpreter, you have to make sure that you have the technology. So that would be the pre-preparation. Do you have the technology? Do you understand the subject matter? When I did some interpreting for the board, the school board, they were going to go over the fiscal reports. And I remember going into that presentation and preparing myself. So that would be the pre-preparation and preparation, right? Are there some terms that I don't know how to translate in Spanish? I'm going to go and do my due diligence and have the translation ready so that I don't struggle during that time. And then active listening and analysis, right? You're listening to the person speaking the language. You're identifying key ideas. You're analyzing the message, and then you need to know how to use the correct syntax in the language because you're going to transfer it to the language, right? You're converting the message. And then cultural mediation means when you're bridging all these cultural differences to make sure that the message is understood as intended, right, to your target audience. And then the delivery. How are you going to communicate this message? Are you going to do it clearly, and you're going to do it in the target language? Now, very important for you to know that grammatical structures have different rules. We'll go in Module 2, we'll go into that. Vocabulary nuances as well. There's some words that have multiple meanings. You're going to do that in Module 2. We're going to practice the tilde diacritica. And then idiomatic expressions are a huge thing, especially when it comes to legal interpreting. Part of the exam for the written examination, even though it's multiple choice, has a big chunk of idiomatic expressions, so it's important to learn them as well, right? And regional variations, we need to know different types of vocabulary that is used within both English and Spanish in different areas, and what is that? What is the meaning? Very important to know the cultural nuances, especially I love it when I have students that are not just from Mexico, but from other places in Central America, so that we can also learn some of the words that are very unique to certain areas, right? Nonverbal communication, you need to be aware, like, different languages, what do they mean, different gestures, different nonverbal. Cultural context, very, very, very important. And also formality in Spanish, we use the usted, very formal subject-verb agreement to refer to in a very polite way when we do translations. So just to point out that all the written translations have to be written in usted, very formal, throughout this course. And then what are some effective interpreting strategies? We're going to practice note-taking. We're going, once you get really good in your field, you're going to have the anticipation. It just comes, believe me, it's something that you build very naturally. Once you are repeating the same terminology, you can predict what the speaker is going to say, and based on these linguistic patterns, right? Rephrasing the messages in the target language. Maybe you don't have that. Maybe that precise word does not come to mind, but you can think of a word that means similar to that, right? Or maybe the same thing. Paraphrasing, and then chunking. Chunking is very important, especially when you're starting as an interpreting, because you're going to break down long sentences into smaller, more manageable, and that's why I have some audios where you can pause to interpret. Also, I posted in the practice for the digital concept, the part where I told you that I obtained a grant to do a digital lab. I have some Estivo audios there for you to practice, and you can slow them down because you want to make sure that you're breaking the long sentences while you're becoming more of a fast speed interpreter. Here's another thinking point, right? Another ethical dilemma. So make sure that you read that one as well. So where can we work? I like to share always my journey with students. I started in the world of journalism, and I was always interpreting every day because I worked for La Opinion newspaper in the day that newspapers were of the golden age, and we used to have a partnership with the LA Times. So I worked in La Opinion for many years, but I interview all my most of the people that I interview for the stories. Those interviews were conducted in English, so I had to do translations translate them back to Spanish so I can write in the Spanish language. So there's many settings where you could utilize your bilingual skills. Healthcare, more and more now we see the mobile, when you go to clinics, they bring you a mobile unit where they connect the interpreter, right? Legal settings, there's a demand. You're going to learn as we move on. There's a demand in California. There's a shortage of legal interpreters. Education, maybe you're interested in education. Some of you might already be working in education. In IEPs, as mostly the school districts have a need for special education and in translating and interpreting for that. Businesses as well, government, translating, and community services as well. So as you can see, there's many areas and many for you to tap in. Very important to continue professional development always. So even as you're in this course, always do try to read and always try to practice English and Spanish, interpreting back and forth when you're watching TV, maybe when you're watching the news. If you're watching the news in English, try to be repeating all the time, shadowing. We'll practice that. I'll give you some links to excellent shadowing examples so that you could practice both languages, interpreting back and forth between both languages. Very important for you to read literature, just to expand your vocabulary, practice interpreting. If you're really good at simultaneous, then practice consecutive. If you're really good at consecutive, then practice simultaneous and the other way around. And be teachable, right? We want to be teachable and we want to get feedback, constructive criticism all the time as to where can we areas of growth. And professional development is critical. We need to always continue formal training, and even in the field. For example, the court interpreters program, even those that are working or have been working for many years in the court, they're required to continue to do professional development and continuing education. Very, very important. So here we went over very fast over some of the skills that are required of interpreters. What are the modes of interpreting and some of the effective strategies. I would like to also point out the dangers of using AI or machine translators. Even though this is a very old example, I love to use this because this Google was horrible many years ago, and this is an actual case that happened in England. And you can read it on your own, but this was a horrible translation. So there's the dangers of using machine translators even now with artificial intelligence. In the last 2 years that I've been using it, I've tried with some translations to show students like, hey, this is dangerous because machines hallucinate, and I would like for you to Google what hallucination means. It's a machine, so they're going to be faulty at times, and you need to do your due diligence. So yes, I'm all for promoting and encouraging students to use technology. However, I consider it very unethical when students just copy paste and just find the easy way out and you're not learning the interpreting skills, because you're not always going to be able to resort to AI to get you out of an assignment, especially when you're out in the field, right? So you need to know, you need to learn these skills and become really proficient in what you're doing in terms of interpreting and translation. Very important for you to go over the key terms, consecutive interpreter, simultaneous. What is the source language, right? What is the target language? What is code switching or in other words, could be referred as Spanglish would be one example. Why is it important to have cultural competence? And then what is the register? What is paraphrasing when it comes to interpreting? Accuracy, clarity, note-taking, sight interpreting, colloquial slang, regionalism, idioms, and cultural nuances, and KSAs. Very important for you to learn what the acronym for knowledge, skills, and abilities is. And this is also in the workforce. Most of the job descriptions have listed the KSA, so that's a term that you must know. So that wraps up our Module 1 video lecture. Just a reminder that modules open every Monday, and then all your assignments are due on the Sunday of that week at 11:59. Also, please make sure to listen to the audio that I post every week. in the announcement section to go over that week's deadlines or any other reminders. So please make sure you get into the habit of listening to those audios beginning in week 2. Thank you.